Well, like, we like to go to Wild West.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's perfect distance, not far. City's facilities. So, John's he's not.
Oh my gosh.
He was a butcher.
You said it, not me.
Years ago. Oh man, it was so fun. So if you get a chance.
Yeah, I should.
It's really good.
Basketball, cheer. Sir, how are you?
I know, but he's like,
Cool. Every year.
Yeah. They want to hold them.
Be fun, but how often do you see a castle? How long do you just walk down the river?
Yeah, it's.
That's like my full-time job, so yeah.
Leading this group. No.
You were just sitting beside
You all ready?
sit right beside
Why not, Miss Sherry says. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Thursday night event of our 10-year celebration of a panel discussion of the making of an icon. My name is Gavin Wolcher. I'm the director of the Billings Public Library. Tonight we have a great group of panelists that had different parts of this making of the icon. Now, Don, I'm not going to let you off. Don's in the audience, so you might have a question thrown about architecture as well, that you're better, much more knowledgeable than I am about that. So we'll just say it that way. But this group, while we have 7 people up here, there were literally dozens and dozens and dozens of others that worked hand in hand with this group to get this building built. So as I said on Monday night, if you were here, there are so many wonderful stories that we just don't have time to explore all of them. We're going to get about 1% this week of the stories told of all that we could. But tonight we have Evelyn Nolan, Kara Shear, Bill Lambden, Molly Bell, Bill Cochran, Lloyd Mickelson, and Sherry Nault, who were all very instrumental in getting this building built. So on Monday night as well, if you were in the audience, I said we were going to have a surprise guest, Mr. Will Bruder. That did not work out for him to come, unfortunately. That would have been interesting to hear his perspective of the build and the project itself, but he was unable to come. So, to start us off, though, Miss Sherry has asked to tell a story.
Well, I have a couple, and I'll be quick. And speaking,
Get the mic.
hey, how does it turn on?
That you won't speak into it.
Well, I'll tell the Will Bruder story first then. I remember when he was in the process of deciding what the design would be, and he wanted to get everyone excited, particularly about the children's story tower. So he was in I don't know where we were, I forget, Don, where we met, but anyway, he got down on the floor. Now this is a middle-aged man, a bit portly. He got down on the floor and he's flashing about how the children could go into the story tower and they could see up.
It was where the story tower was going to be. So.
Yes. And his wife said to me, "Oh God, I hope I don't have to get him off that floor again." And another quick story, I remember the basement of the old building had water in it. So I said to Bill Cochran, ever the gentleman, I said, I think we need a pool. We would be the only library in Montana that had a pool, and maybe in the country. And of course, Bill, being who he is, he just sort of smiled at me like, this too will pass. And one more story. We used to meet in this floor that was up in the top of the building, and there was virtually no heat Do you remember that? And I suggested that we dress warmly. At that point, I was chair, so I was running the meetings, and we had to keep moving. And we kept the meetings very short, as you can imagine, because we almost froze to death. And we rarely ever in those meetings banned books, but thinking back, we could have burned some.
So what I'd like to do is each, starting with Miss Evelyn, each panelist to kind of paint the picture of their involvement with the process of getting this building built.
Hello. I'm Evelyn Nonig, and I was president of the foundation from 2010 and 2011. And so this whole process started while I was president. And Leslie and I looked at each other and said, are we really crazy enough to do this? And of course, we did. And to our great relief, it was quite the success. But I think the biggest thing that through this whole process was education. We educated the public about how bad the old library was with food, lunch at the library. We'd take them on tours, and they'd just be appalled at what the back in the basement and upstairs and no heat. And that was really the start. But what we knew we needed to do was we needed to educate ourselves on how to make this happen and to be successful. So in Chicago, we went to Chicago in March of 2010, 3 of us, to a school that was on philanthropy and how to run a capital campaign. And that truly was such a good foundation for us because it made us understand the work we had to do. And we had to do it right because you only get one shot, as we knew how many times the bond issues had failed. And if we didn't get it right this time, who knows when we'd have that opportunity again. So that really was key to how we started and came back, along with our donation of $2 million. And that really was the criteria for looking at an architect to bring the community a significant building of architectural sound. And so that became, along with our plan from going to the school to hire a firm to help us with the capital campaign, and that's where we got Kevin Wallace. We went through people to find that out. And then the next step was the partnerships that happened in the community. The partnerships with the foundation, the city, the clinic, Stockman Bank, Parks and Rec. I mean, we had to do land swaps. Bill worked with everybody to make them understand the importance of this all to come together. And then we had George Sullivan, Bill Dimage, the mayor, the Gazette, Hilltop, Olson's, Parks and Rec. They stayed off the ballot so that we would be the only one on it. And through all that with Hilltop, it was educating the public of why we needed a library, educating our donors why we needed the library. And I do truly believe being able to bring plans, a vision to the community, and us raising our $3 million by the time that ballot went to be voted on, we promised and brought to them what we said we would. And I do think, as they say, the stars aligned, and here we are today, and I'm very thankful for it. So it was an honor to be able to start the project, and then it was an honor to move over to the ballot initiative and work with Molly Bell and Hilltop. So
Awesome.
One of the best things I've ever done in my life.
Kara?
Oh, I hate microphones.
microphones. Is it working? Yep, okay. I think Ellen really covered a lot of the important aspects of everything. Serving on the Library Foundation Board was probably one of the best boards I've had the honor to serve on. But as Ellen said, education really was the key to everything, and we had some questions that were assigned to us about, what about this and what about that. And one of the questions that was posed to me was, what was your thought when you knew that, how are you going to raise all that money? $5 million, that's what the foundation committed to, and luckily we had right off the bat a $2 million anonymous donation. But you think, $3 million, that's a lot of money. But going to this workshop in Chicago gave us the tools that we needed. Then we had to come back, as Evelyn said, and then pass that information on. But the one thing, and I'm sure most of all of you that's in this audience tonight has served on one board or another, but I think a key ingredient to having a successful board and having successful projects is the board has to believe in whatever your project is. And our board, I think we would agree, we had a fantastic board. And I think almost everybody stayed on the board for, normally serving on the board is a 3-year commitment. And you have to term off after 6. Everybody stayed on a full 6 years. Some of us actually were on there longer because we were filling out other members' terms, and so it was even greater. But when I think back, I think the one thing when we've had our private discussions, the one person that really needs to be acknowledged, who isn't here, literally is not with us, he has passed on to the next world, is Royal Johnson. And if any of you knew Royal, he was a very active member in our community. I've only lived here in Billings since 1990, but he was very active in this community. He served on the city council, was one of the state legislators, but he could see the importance of the library, but he also recognized from his work in politics, and he knew how finances worked in government bodies, that the library would need a supporting body to help them raise more money, other than the money that they would get from the city budget. So he got the whole idea of establishing a foundation that would raise money for the library. In fact, I think unless you've changed the mission, Cody, is the mission of the Library Foundation is to raise vital funds for the library that would give the library that margin of excellence for their services, for their staff, and that's exactly what the foundation does. But anyway, Royal, if it weren't for him having that vision, knowing that for this library or any library to grow, it needs to have that other body to the endowment, to raise funds. And that's exactly what the purpose of the foundation does. And so it worked out just great. And what I'm not sure how many of you knew Royal, but he felt that a community was made up of a lot of neighbors, and that the government shouldn't have to take care of the neighborhood. People took care of each other. You have to take a stand and be actively involved. And he felt no better place than here at the library, because the library is community. So I think one of our greatest feelings in being very proud, being involved with the library, is we created a new cornerstone in the city and a new landmark. And this building, so to speak, is going to continue on to give generations, more enjoyment. It's our, what do we call it? Our legacy. This is our legacy, and it's a great legacy. So I know we'll talk more, but anyway,
Bill?
Pass it on.
As I sit here thinking about my involvement in the library, I gotta back up a little bit. I'm assuming everybody in this room has seen the movie Zelig that Woody Allen did probably 30 years ago about the guy who shows up at various points in history and gets to witness really important things. I kind of view myself as the Zelig of this project. I was one of the first board members that Bill recruited onto the board in 2001, maybe, right after the prior bond issue failed and the entire board resigned. So I was recruited onto the board at that time. We used to meet up there on the 5th or 6th floor of the Harborville building. We spent the next 5 years or so, I think the 5-year terms, right? So the next 5 years doing what boards do, but always coming back to the library. And we conducted studies, and we, should we have branches in Laurel on the West End and in the Heights? Should we drop books out of airplanes? Should we have ice cream trucks that deliver books? We need to study this and study that. And so the whole idea of a library was always on our mind, even though we were doing other board things and other library things in that 5-year period. Then my term was up, and I applied for another term, and due to some controversy between Rimrock Foundation, that I was the president of the board at that time in the city of Billings, I kind of got blackballed off of the library board by a political figure that's no longer around. And so I was off the board. Well, the first opportunity that Bill had after that political figure was no longer in a position of power was to recruit me back onto the board. And so that would have been about 2008, somewhere in there, in the middle of the Great Recession. And I can remember vividly the first board meeting I came back to, I probably recognized 3 or 4 of the board members from my prior service a couple of years earlier, but there was a bunch of new people. And it's the actual meeting where they were considering the proposal that had been made by the Ganand family, which to donate the building or whatever, sell the building. I don't even remember what it was now. And that would be our library. And I walked into the middle of that, and I thought it was a terrible idea. And I wasn't going to, I basically led a discussion that said, let's not reject this idea, but let's not be too hasty. And so we decided not to proceed with that proposal at that time, not to reject it, but to just slow down. And after that meeting, I called Bill. I said, this is not a good idea, and we got to do something about this. So Bill and I knew Vince Rugermer, who was on the city council at the time, and called Vince, and we met over at the coffee roasters over here, and I can't remember. I think Lloyd might have been with us. It was Bill and me, and I think Lloyd, if I recall correctly. We met with Vince Rugermer, and we went through the whole thing. We thought, that there's some momentum building for this Ganand's building thing, and we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but we don't think it's a good idea. And if we're going to try and do something, we've only got one shot to get this right, and there's absolutely no way, given what had happened with the prior issue, when the city council at the last minute walked away from it. I said, we can't do anything without the city council's backing. And Vince told us at that time, because we had by then experience with Ealer Park and the failure and then the passing of the levy after there was more money put up by the private sector. Vince told us at that time, if you guys can get a substantial, contribution of seed money for this project, he says, I can get the council onto this project. And so we came back, and that was sort of the beginning of what resulted in this building. I think pretty quickly, Hilltop was identified and hired, and they did a great job for us. And the foundation was instrumental in putting together their committees and the fundraising. And we got accomplished in 2009, 2010, in that period. Getting that that bond issue passed and $5 million plus raised was really a remarkable thing. If you remember the condition, the state of the world economy at that time, we were in the middle of a Great Recession, and I think this bond issue that passed at that time was the only issue in the whole United States that passed, and for a library. And so it really is a remarkable achievement. And then the others here, really did fantastic work in bringing this all about.
So I was working for Hilltop Public Solutions, which others have mentioned, and it is a political consulting firm with offices. At the time, we had offices in Washington, D.C., New York, and Billings, Montana. They've since grown quite a bit across the country, but at the time when the committee came to us, I was an associate there, and in my mid-20s, and very bright-eyed about everything. And I have always been very passionate myself about libraries. When I was a kid, I would go to the library, and I love reading, and so I was just so enthusiastic about this project. And my boss, and he's not going to mind me saying this because he's said this to people before, was like, Molly, we can't do this. It's too much work. I think we should say no. And I was like, please let us, I really want to help. I could sense that there was such momentum and passion. And he was like, okay, well, you're running it then. And I was like, all right, okay, here we go. And we consulted on the electoral campaign for the ballot initiative. These folks made my job so easy. Just the work that everybody volunteered to put into this project. We had a campaign office over here, like kind of on the corner there, and people would be in there like 8 hours a day. I'd send people out of the doors. We'd have like hundreds of people coming to knock doors in the community to talk one-on-one with voters. And I think Chris Schmeckel got bit by a dog knocking doors. And
She ran in the house.
oh yes, yeah.
And she didn't get shot for trespassing. Then she waited till the dog went around the back.
Yes.
She escaped.
So we.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Chris and I were working together when we were in that particular neighborhood, and I could hear this, help, help, what is going on? And she was really frightened for her life because this dog was pretty vicious, but she'll never forget that. We won't either.
So people really put their blood, sweat, and tears into this, and like I said, it made my job easy to have such a passionate group of people raising money, willing to put the time in. And I think that it made such a difference to the community that we had people that were showing that, hey, look, we raised this money, this $2 million, this investment, that, it's a partnership with the community. I'd heard anecdotally that a lot of people were either on the fence or not going to vote for the campaign, but when they had somebody come to their door, it convinced them. And I remember, I can talk a little bit more about this, but I remember a lot of our canvassing efforts that I would really instill in people that if you get somebody who's really negative about it, just walk away. Because you can talk to, in the time that you have somebody who's like never going to be convinced, you can talk to 3 more people who could be convinced. And so I really just applaud this committee, and it's one of the best things I've ever worked on, and I've made some really good friends through it. So yeah, it was amazing, and now I get to bring my 3-year-old son here, and he loves it. We have lots of overdue library books, so but I'll pass it to Bill here.
And I'm Bill Cochran. I was the director of the library for 25 years, including this campaign. I'll back briefly up since you mentioned Royal. I came in 1990, and shortly after my arrival, we realized that because of decreasing property values during the oil bust and changes in state aid and other things, our budget had been decreasing in actual dollars, separate from the impact of inflation and so forth. So that had been going on for around a decade. So the staffing in 1993 was about 24 staff, down from 40 10 years earlier. So the staffing was really stretched, and even at 40 it wasn't much for a community this size in the United States, but it was in the ballpark. 24 was kind of off the charts. So that year, 93, we had to take our last bookmobile off the road. There had been 3 10 years earlier. The last one came off the road in 1993. We eliminated our materials budget entirely to start the budget process, and cut back on everything that we could just to get through. And we turned to the library board again. At that time, Sherry Shiel Matusi, who would go on to become the U.S. Attorney for Montana, was the chair of the library board. And she appointed a citizens task force, had about 70 people. It was kind of a similar, widespread community effort. And it was co-chaired not by balancing parties, because there was a preference at that time, as now, for parties, but Royal Johnson from the city background and Dwight McKay, who had been a county commissioner. So they were both Republicans, but that spoke to who the majority party was operating city and county, and it was important. And it was Sherry who was appointed by a Democratic president to be the U.S. Attorney. So it showed bipartisan support and city and county support. 70 people got involved. Out of the publicity for that, Sam McDonald, who was the head of Wendy's in Montana, got in touch with me. He had seen TV commercials. There were donated TV commercials for people to get on the task force and to work on the future of the library, because we didn't know what to do. And when Sam talked to me, I said, well, we don't have any materials budget. There's other, you could do things like that, or it might be nice for the community to know where libraries are going, and have you heard of the internet? What's the internet? Well, it's kind of a big deal, you some articles, look at the coast and that kind of thing. So he put up $150,000 over 3 years. And about 6 weeks after Seattle Public Library became one of the first in the country to have internet access out of a public library, we signed with the same company, WLN, out of Seattle. And that, by Christmas, we had that up and running, and the Information Access Corporation in San Francisco had the biggest digital database, but they didn't have any clients anywhere except right there. We called down and said, we'd be interested in bringing your databases to the library over the internet. And he said, well, it sounds good, but, we'll have to give it to our attorneys, and, we don't have any models for contracts or anything. So we said, well, we have this money, it would be a shame. So the city attorney's office and their attorneys got together, and we were able to put together contracts in a few weeks for what became databases available here, and then became, that's what they do now, so access to their databases over the internet globally. And so we hosted that for eastern Montana and the rest of the state, and moved it to the rest of to the state library, so to serve the rest of the state. But that gave the community a whole different idea about what the role of libraries in an information world could be. And that Citizens Task Force, over a series of about 6-8 months, came up with the idea of a mill levy, a 5 mill campaign. And because Sherry and Ron and Dwight were all running for office and people were doing things where they couldn't be involved, I had to be the spokesperson for bond issue, which is you do not do. I'm a public official. I couldn't campaign, I couldn't advocate for it, I could answer questions. And so that's all I did, was go out and answer questions about that. Nobody gave us a prayer. It was a ludicrous idea, but I'll give it a shot. We ended up passing that mill levy by a 3-to-1 margin. It was the largest margin for a mill levy that there had been in decades. And, with that funding, we were able to slowly, we were able to order a new bookmobile, keep the digital services going, put our collection budget back, start banking some money. We didn't have any reserves, and we needed it for all of the repairs on the old building. From there, we were able to put a campaign together, and Don will remember this, but we started looking at what it would take to renovate the old building, the hardware warehouse. And 15 to 17 million, adjusted now would be in the 20s. It would be more to fix that building and build a new building.
Still a remodel job.
And it would be a remodel job, and it was a hardware warehouse, so the floors were 18 inches thick with steel rebar, which is not ideal for running wireless internet. Jackhammering just to run wires through, you couldn't get a signal through the rebar and so forth. But we were able to put some funding together, and from then on, we had to simultaneously plan what to do for a building. There was renovation of that building, branches. We had a project that got a pilot going with the College of Technology to be a branch in the West End. We looked at other kinds of branches, looked at the Ganans proposal. But we also had to live with the idea that we might just have to keep fixing stuff in the old buildings. We had to maintain some reserves. Everything was failing. You talked about those. My office eventually was on the 4th floor, and it leaked. There was water leaking. I kept telling maintenance to go fix the leak, and they put a new ceiling tile in. So we did that over and over. So then they put a ladder up and got up there, and there was a bucket on some 2x4s, and it wasn't under the leak. The leak was 20 feet away, and there was a gutter that ran it over to the bucket, and the bucket had filled up and was coming out the side. So I mentioned this to Don. He said, "Well, yeah, this is pretty dry climate. That's not a bad solution." You see that around here a lot. So,
They got that corrected.
yes. So got it corrected, but the roof was fit. Elevators, the door systems, the furnace air handling was encased in asbestos. But we had to keep enough money to deal with whatever was condemned or red tag or whatever to keep things going, and not spend all the money in case there was a chance to do something else. So I was out at a workshop sponsored by the Public Library Association in Seattle in 2010 when I got a phone call from here that the foundation's capital campaign had identified a donor who put up $2 million anonymously for all the architectural and engineering costs for a new building of architectural significance. And that's one of the most important things to think about for a minute. There was no project at that time. There was no bond issue on ballot. We didn't have a site. We knew what the community group said a good site would be, which is down here where we were. And that was real estate agents, planning department, city and county staff, all kinds of citizens, trustees. And then we did a survey, and by far the most popular choice was down here where we were. But at that point, the Underwriter dealership owned quite a bit of property. Stockman had just moved in. We didn't see a lot of change happening with Underwriter at the moment, but we started working on all that, and as was alluded to, the momentum that $2 million donation was, because the city, nobody wanted to fumble $2 million that was being offered by a citizen for a project in the city. And so, yeah, you got a green light, go for it. So, city council members have been on this committee that wanted to be here, so then we started working with the council, planning department, Stockman Bank. The clinic had bought the Underwriter property. Their vacation of the property happened quicker than was expected and allowed that exchange to happen so that we could get the Underwriter property. And we had bought the Hancock parking lot to the south of our building, which was the only place parking could expand if we were going to have to stay in the old building. And Stockman wanted that for their building. We were able to swap with the clinic for that lot. We were able to assemble a full block downtown without spending any money. Everybody agreed to forego, years of due diligence and all that. It all worked out. There weren't any problems with the property. And from then on, all of these different groups kicked into overdrive, and I was kind of, I needed to make sure everybody was on the same wavelength and things didn't crash. So the spinning plate, I think you once mentioned that I must have been spinning a lot of plates. And that's kind of what I did for quite a while, was all with plate spinning. I worked for Molly. I was of a certain age, and I would take time off on vacation, because as a public employee, you can't do any political work on your job. But I could take vacation and go help with political campaign. I did a few asks with the foundation for the capital campaign, the board, at the city council, county commission, friends of the library, lots of groups. I did all of that. And then when it actually came down to it and the bond issue passed, I was able to work with the design team and the contractor. We had a lot of meetings, every weekly meetings, I think, for the construction of the project.
I'll pass it over to you.
Gavin, aren't you glad you came when you did?
I've often said this is my spoils of war.
Yeah.
Well, I came on the board. I was on the board prior to building. I was on the board for just a little while, and I was elected president of the board. And one of my first duties, if you will, was to get the county and the city together to support the library. And one of the council members wanted to be the boss of the administrator of the library. He wanted to have a lot of say about what the council is to be in charge of, which our board didn't think that was too great. But on the commission, I happened to have a former student who was a commissioner, and the commissioner told the councilman, if you don't sign this, then it's all over with, etc., and so on and so forth. So it helped to have that person there. In addition, as the president, prior to the building going, I talked to, I don't know, 2 or 3 people who wanted the library to go into the Gibson building up on Broadwater, if you, those of you who are familiar with that. And trying to talk them out of that idea. And really, reality, we were kind of almost ready to go into Dan's, and then, I don't know, somebody didn't think that was a good idea. And rightfully so. But the $2 million money that came in at the right time. Then let me just jump in that after that, she became the president, and then I became the co-chairman along with Mr. Frank over here for the committee of overseeing everything, which was an important position to have. And one of the things that I take credit for is for having this public room. I kept on Will that we have to have a public room for discussions, and we got one. So I'm very happy with that aspect of it, and the people have covered pretty much the rest of the situation, but we made it, didn't we, Frank? All the way through. I kept Frank sitting down instead of getting too riled up from time to time, but Frank was, his company was responsible for a lot of the furniture here. And I guess all of it. I don't remember anybody else, but yeah, we had somebody else that wanted it, but that didn't work out. So, anyway, it has been a great feeling to have been able to work with all of the people and to be a part of building this building in my lifetime.
Well, I'll finish off with a fundraising story. Bill and I, he set up a most wonderful opportunity. So I asked the fellow for $1 million. And I swear, he went into cardiac arrest. I thought, he's going to die before we get the money. We got half of it. But, you know, we tried. No, it's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done, except for my children. So I'm so very glad I got to be part of it.
So, Bill, you mentioned, spinning the plates, and on Monday, it's always been a great curiosity of mine. You have this great project going on. Oh, and by the way, keep a functioning library going at the same time. Can you speak to that? How did you do that? What were your frustrations? What were your stressors? I mean, how is that possible?
Well, the staff kept everything going and did a fantastic job, and that wasn't easy, there was a lot of interest in increasing usage because of all the interest, and they kept up with that. Managers were pulling double duty because we were still managing that building in our budget, and then taking on this massive project and managing it as it happened. Just, for example, what had been staff parking became a staging area for the contractors, the construction team. So we had to anticipate that and go negotiate with School District 2 and the parking division of the city, the leasing of what had been meters all up and down all the streets near Lincoln Center for additional parking for staff, because we split the lot at Lincoln Center. The city actually owned the rights for parking for half of that, and we managed that, but this was to replace the loss of the adjacent parking. So for 2 years we had to lease meters up and down by Lincoln Center. People had to walk, longer than that kind of stuff. Just things you wouldn't think of. And we had to be proactive about that. The changes, like our remote services, how do you get the vehicles in and out? We had to change all of that. Kelsey would remember complexities with that process. My work had to be particularly focused on the new project, of course, and then working with the managers. But everybody just pitched in and made it happen. There was so much goodwill in the community as well that helped. A lot of excitement about that big a project. It was a project, as I impressed upon the contractors in particular. So you're going to be doing this project across the street from the Billings Gazette. So keep that in mind. So, contractor behavior and workers' behavior is whatever it is, but as you have to be particularly careful, because on a slow news day, it's pretty easy to poke the camera out of the window. And so it was very high profile on Main downtown street. Everybody did a great job. We just asked the staff to, dig deep, and it would be worth it at the end, and they did. So, and they couldn't help but be feel good about the support that the community had shown to the private donations and the vote. That was pretty meaningful to everybody, and the excitement of being able to be in a clean building with light and things like that. But I think, yeah.
Hold on just a second. So Molly, I want to touch on one thing that you had said about campaign strategies. You had to have an assortment of them. Can you just kind of tell us a couple of them that really?
Sure, absolutely. So we really pulled out all the stops, and it was thanks to, like I said, the hard work of this committee, not only donating their time, but their funds and raising money so that we were able to pay for mail pieces. We had paid canvassers. At the beginning of the project, we did a phone, like a huge paid phone poll kind of thing where we called everybody in the community and said, are you going to vote for this? And the people that said yes, we made sure we followed up with the person at their door when it got closer to the election and said, hey, you need to show up. And then we also did some yard signs, which I remember one house, maybe it was somebody's house here, had like 10 yard signs. They were like a hot commodity, and I was like, I love your passion, but maybe we need to spread these around, because like we were just running out of yard signs all the time. And there was an intern in our office who came up with the tagline, our community's next chapter, and that was on all of our materials. We did a TV ad on Q2. We were able to buy TV and did a spot there, and we actually kind of filmed. That was a very like in-house job that we filmed the family, and then we had people going out talking to everybody, the speakers bureau. We had people writing letters to the editor. We had our earned media events, so that you either pay for media or you earn it, right? And so we had people, we had a big rally, I believe. And so, yeah, we really, I think we saturated, and it really gave us a library mandate, as I will say. Yep, yep, and we had some ballot stuffing going on. No, I'm just kidding. And people were, down to the wire. These folks were driving out, getting those ballots of people who hadn't voted yet and bringing them in.
I have an interest, so a couple of days before the election, I took vacation, and I don't know if it was you or somebody from the office got in touch with me, and I drove up to the top of the rims. There was a guy from Billings that was driving, he was a long haul trucker, and he's driving through, and he couldn't bring his truck down to the courthouse to vote. And he had called in somehow on CV or something, so I went and picked him up and drove him down to the courthouse so he could vote, and drove him back.
That's awesome. Yeah, and yeah, I think it was just that the community appreciated that we were honest and that we showed up and they were there and transparent, willing to answer everybody's questions about this too. And Bill didn't have to go on the breakfast slate.
They've never invited me.
It may not have been them. It's whatever radio, they're always talking about taxes. That's the one. Yeah.
It was them.
Yeah. I'm not gonna go in there and be a pinata.
So-
I'll do 10 more votes.
Go ahead.
I went on that show during the mill levy campaign, and I said I was available in the group, so I went on the interview show in '93, and the host was very polite, and I was just answering questions, and the numbers spoke for themselves. Our budget just been eroded for a decade, and we're massively down below even a Montana average, let alone a national average per capita. But, so he was very polite, and I was just giving information, and the callers started calling in, and I could recognize some of the voices, they were softball questions, and I answered those, and then somebody called in, and I said, the guy said, library's probably a good thing, but man, my taxes are too high, I can't vote for this. I said, well, I'm glad you called, nobody said that, there's a lot of you who feel the way, you need to vote. And the host and the guy were just dumbstruck. I didn't argue with him. I said, yeah, if there's an election, come on, vote. And you're not the only one. Oh, jeez, man.
So we only have a few more minutes. And one question that I've been thinking about a lot, and this is, and I've been vacillating, am I going to ask it or not? But I think what you shared tonight has pushed me into asking this question, because now I built it up and I can't take a step back. Are we making you all proud? Lloyd and Bill, you've both been on my boards, you've been on Bill's board. We've worked with everybody up here, or I have, a lot of my staff. 7.5 years. And I say it jokingly, but I didn't have to work for this bill. I had to beat 2 other candidates out. That's what I had to do. But I'm thinking, have we made you proud?
Well, I mean, you filled some pretty big shoes with Bill, and in my estimation, because I did assert you did work with our board when I was still on it. You and the staff have done a great job here. I think there's still visibility in community. It's even better now that they've torn down those buildings over there. I don't know how many of you have noticed driving up and down 27th Street at night how absolutely gorgeous the library is from that angle. So hopefully those lots will remain vacant for a while. But I think that you're doing a fantastic job and your staff, and we've always gotten tremendous bang for the buck here. I fiddling around before I came down this evening. I Googled what was the cost of the Missoula Library, and it was $38 million. And it's a beautiful facility, but we did this for about 21 total, about 21 million, 60,000 square feet. Not a wasted inch. But I think you're doing a great job, and not just you, the staff, the whole group, right?
And the foundations.
Yeah. Here's one other point. Listening to Bill go all the way back to 1991, that's 10 years before I was on the board, I think, and considering the comments made by everyone else up here on the panel, this effort, this building is really a 23 or a 24-year effort, not a 4 or 5 year effort, and I just think that that's a real testament to the perseverance of Bill and the others here and the others who aren't here, to just keep working at it, because it wasn't all roses. It was tough, and there were setbacks, and it took a hell of a lot of effort and a little bit of luck.
And before I pass it on to Lloyd, I'll just point out that I'm glad that I retired when I did, so I didn't have to deal with COVID and the more complicated political landscape that libraries are having to deal with too. So seems like there's always plenty of challenges that keep things more than interesting.
Well, what I've noticed is that there's a lot of innovation gone on since Gavin took over. You have the teen lab up there now, and I understand that they're remodeling the teen lab. Is that correct? What's her name? The head of the foundation that used to be Leslie. Yeah, managed to bring in $100,000 to help with that teen lab. They've done a lot with getting programs into here. There's just a lot of things that Gavin has done that needed to be done, and we hope he's around for a while.
Well, given that you don't have to fight the elements and your office ceiling isn't leaking, you're able to focus on bringing in more and different types of activity and engagement for various ages. And I've noticed that. It's a good thing. You're doing a good job, you and your staff.
So on Monday night I said, it's my great pleasure to be the director of this facility, because it was these folks that set the foundation, and it's a very strong foundation for us to grow out of and support. And I mean that, because COVID was not fun. The political landscape is not fun. But we do good work here, and my staff, you're right, it's my staff. But none of this, what we do, would be possible without what all of you did. And I think, Bill, you said it best, it is a 24-year project. And we put in that context, it's just even more mind-blowing what building we are in right now.
I understand that the people who were bringing in the 3 million or 5 million, whatever you did, that you became that other people were calling you because of your success. You become, what's the word I want? Can't think of the word I want, but anyway. Yeah, consulting, but
The model.
Model, sorry, that's the model. And one more thing that, and you can attend to this, that Will, the architect, when he was hired, went around all around the community here, and so in reality, you're sitting in a sheep shed.
Pole barn.
Pole barn?
Pole.
Pole barn? Well,
Yeah.
okay, that was a sheep shed, but the pole barn. Same difference. You can put sheep in the pole barn. Yeah, so, some interesting things of that. But some of us got to go to, down to Wyoming and then down to Arizona to see some of the other libraries, and then into Colorado before we got a design. So anyway, very good.
Kara, you get final thoughts. No pressure.
How can I cram all this in? One of the points that came up about people were seeking our advice on how to go about doing things. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm sure
A lot of you have heard about the Murdoch Foundation. Well, after we had the building completed, we were the only library foundation members that were invited to come to the Murdoch Foundation to tell the rest of the attendees how we did it. So at that time, Kathy Cross and our former director, Leslie Madra, and I went back to Vancouver, Washington. And it was really amazing because we were able to share a lot of our knowledge with these other folks. And as Evelyn said at the very beginning, education was the key to this whole project. We had to educate ourselves, educate everybody around us, educate the community. And I think we came up with the term, it was cooperative collaboration between all the different entities in the city, and it all brought together. I really wish that Will could have been here tonight, and this might be another evening of discussion, because every single detail in this building, from these walls, which are recycled wood from Sellover offices. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a snow fence, but that's right, out there, in the kids' area, sorry, thank you. See, that's why we need to have the architect here. Yeah, the type of flooring here, as we need more technology, this floor comes up in sections so they can put more wiring. I mean, there's so much, so I think that might be a great program on the architecture. And Mark, who is our former board member, I'm sure he'd be a great moderator. But just remember, every detail in this building, there is a reason for it. And architecture is just fascinating. So, and if this is the last word, then I think we also need to, we can't thank our former foundation president, director, Leslie Madra, who did a fantastic job in coordinating all these different people. It was just raising money, and also talking about raising money. Two key people that are here tonight, they were our capital campaign managers, and that was Mary Underwriter and Stella Fong. And key people, because they knew how to target people, and we knew where to go to ask for the dollar. So it took a huge team effort. It wasn't just us, it was a huge, huge effort by everybody. So, thank you.
So Tonight, I said we'd only get to about 1% of the stories. I wasn't here during this. We could be here another 4 hours and still only be touching the tip of the iceberg. There is stuff that I heard tonight I had never heard before. And I think that is one of the biggest, for me, exciting parts of this great end accomplishment are the human stories behind it. We've heard Molly said blood, sweat, and tears, literally blood. And there was so much humaneness that went into this, and I can't imagine the frustrations. I can't imagine the setbacks, but yet they all had the one goal. We're getting this done, and we're doing this. Well, this is it. Thank you all for attending tonight. Please join me in thanking the panelists.